across this country. So that is why this Securing Our Schools Act of 2022 should be passed and pushed to all schools, private schools and public schools across America.
Hello, my name is Michelle. Today I'll be reviewing Ted Cruz's Securing Our School Act of 2022. This act proposed by the Texas Senator Ted Cruz will militarize our schools and employ unqualified mental health professionals who, unlike certified therapists, are required to share student personal information with the student parents. This case is about the safety of our kids in United States public schools. This act proposed by the notorious Texas Senator Ted Cruz will militarize our schools and employ unqualified mental health professionals who, unlike certified therapists, are required to share student personal information with the students' parents. While this act is supposedly looking for the very good within our schools, bringing in heavy enforced militarized people will this is contained with three contentions. Having more armed guards will prevent school shootings. The FBI database shows that out of the last 51 school shootings, 47 of those times police were inside the building within 6 minutes with a median time of 3. But we have seen in recent events like Uvalde where the 376 officers within minutes, but it still took 55 minutes for the police to neutralize the shooter. We have seen this time again, and a shooter arrives on campus, begins shooting heavily, armed SWAT and security are within the same 5 minutes. And the shooting continues until the shooter kills himself or escapes until later captured. It is very far and few between the police apprehend and neutralize the shooter on scene. One thing all guns in this world cannot stop, though, is the choice the shooter made to go to the school and shoot our kids. If we want to solve this repeating tragedy, we have to look at the source of a problem and stop trying to play whack-a-mole with shooters and save our children from suffering any more tragedies. Having heavily armed guards walking around schools all day is going to make students have an uncomfortable learning environment. The armed guards Ted Cruz wants to bring in will be armed with semi-automatic rifles, concession guns, and other big weapons. All these weapons will do nothing to stop the shooter from walking into the school. According to Action Network, increasing police weapon arsenal does nothing to lower crime rates, and that the more heavily armed police are, the more likely they are to use equipment unnecessarily and injure kill civilians. Contention 2 is mental health professionals. The implication of mental health professionals is a step in the right direction. The way this bill goes about introducing them will not be helping anyone. Most schools already have counselors that nobody comes to, making it to where the counselor therapist has to share the things they discuss within the students to the parents is just going to discourage their use even more. Growing the trust within the professionals will increase the trust within the students with the ones already placed at the school and not waste millions of dollars on more than what is needed. And last point, taking away funding the Ted Cruz claim to saving lives just because of difference of opinion of critical race theory is not okay. Contention 3 is militarizing our schools. Militarizing our schools have shown that it can have an effect on mental and physical health, which is very opposite of their intentions. It will not keep our schools safe and have our kids lose some trust within the school. The schools already have SROs placed and assigned to schools who carry a simple gun that we have all seen and semi-gotten used to. But that is nothing compared to what this act is trying to add to that. Many students have already lost family and friends to those type of guns that they will be carrying and what they are trying to implement. Seeing the big semi-automatic rifles, stun guns, and multiple concussion grenades will increase the mental ability of these kids and in conclusion, Ted Cruz's Securing School Act will have the opposite of its intentions effect and will waste billions of dollars that could be spent on something to make real progress. We are fighting for the lives of the United States. This act brings more fear and danger than it will protection and comfort. We need to do better. We can't pass this act.
All right. So for the crossfire, please stand. And from now on, please stand whenever you're speaking. Yeah, 2 minutes.
If officers receive, if we allow this bill to be, or this act to be passed, officers will receive more training to avoid what happened at the Uvalde, because you mentioned the Uvalde's elementary school case and how the officers took too long to get in. But if they receive money from this act, more officers will be trained for that. So I don't think that you bringing that up is valid.
I feel like there has been already many shootings in the past that they could have easily already prepared for. So there was a shooting in about, I believe, 1999. What is it? The Columbine, and they had armed guards, and yet it still happened. So there has been shootings before Uvalde, and obviously their training has not helped them. So what is bringing armed guards with heavier armor gonna do for the kids besides scare them and affect their mental health?
You're right. There was the school shooting in Columbine happened almost decades ago. But you mentioned how if for the mental health, if school shootings could be stopped by, like school shootings could potentially, if mental health professionals knew about, like if kids got therapy in school or counseling in school, that parents will hear about what happens and that will stop children from going to talk to counselors. They're already in schools, but it's already proven that in the Columbine case that many students knew about the students beforehand. It could have stopped, potentially stopped that shooting from happening had they received counseling.
So you are mentioning about kids already knowing, but the kids will not go up to adults, even though they are scared because they are scared from the. Is that time?
No, you have 2 seconds. I am keeping time.
My bad, we started the time.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
We need only time for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give Martin to call time.
Hello, my name is Neval Mutayri. I'm the attack speaker for the affirmative side. I would like to start by acknowledging that this year is likely to be the second highest year for mass shootings in the United States on record, according to the data compiled by the Gun Violence Archive, a nonprofit that tracks gun violence incidents across the country. So it's safe to say that American people find it necessary that every public school in America is protected by an armed guard who has been specifically trained to protect the lives of students and staff in an event of on-site violence. Under the Secure Our School Act of 2022, Cruz seeks $15 billion to double the number of school resource officers, $10 billion to hire 15,000 mental health professionals for middle and high school, and $2.5 billion for physical security improvements on school campuses. The legislation, just like my friend said before, came months after the mass shooting of Robb Elementary, something that was devastating, left 19 students and 2 teachers dead and 17 other injured. These security guards are not only required to be armed with the equipment that would allow them to neutralize threats, such as semi-automatic rifles, handguns, and tasers, etc., but the state will be required to conduct an annual training for these security guards to ensure their ability to protect students and staff with the equipment that they are provided. Now, Mr. Cruz has a long, life-standing history of advocating for the security of students by improving school safety. The United States is likely to soon surpass the total of 610 mass shootings in 2020, with less than a month left to 2022. Gun violence has become far more regular than any other country in the world, and it shows no sign of stopping. There has been at least 53 school shootings at K-12 schools so far this year. The frequency of gun violence at schools had traumatized survivors and impacted people deeply. But this bill will not only help eliminate any potential harm to these children, but it will provide students enrolled in school to a mental health professional employed at school. And studies shows that 4 out of 5 school shootings, at least one other person had prior knowledge of the attacker's plan but failed to report it. This wouldn't have never been the case if school were a safe space for children to find counseling, help, and if it definitely wouldn't have happened if more police officers were in school. In fact, a study done by Arizona State shows that in the case of school resource officers, the type of benefits that school administrators found from having police officers working in the school were increased safety in and around the school, increased perception of safety, and improved police call response time. And this study also had provided a lot of success stories from countries like Canada and the UK who already have implemented similar plans to that. Also, it states that police officers assigned to school have a unique access to student, teacher, parents, and as a result can be fundamentally affect their perception of the police. Another study done by the University of Florida, and I quote, "The team found students to have more interactions with officer reported feeling the officer did in fact contribute to the school safety. Student who reported more trust and comfort talking to the officers also reported feeling safer in school. These findings point to the importance of relationship between officers and students. And having police officers in school can have many desirable effects, including providing police with a feedback, concern, fears, and whatnot." Lastly, I would like to talk about the critical race theory. It's funny that a race theory that has been debunked by many renowned scientists and only had been mentioned in the bill for like 2 sentences is now the biggest point or the biggest claim of your argument. And a research done by, back to the mental health, a research done by Dr. Daniel
That
J.
is your time.
All right. I'll be rebuttaling the gate. Earlier in your opening statement, you mentioned that 12 kids a day are killed and 32 are shot. I was just curious about the statistics about that, but I'll give you a chance to respond to that later. You said 75% of shootings had warning signs that students knew about before. I was just curious, if you knew about something potentially so dangerous, how would you be scared to go to a mental resource officer, especially if they know they're in contact with their parents? They're required to share everything about that you share with them to your parents until you turn 19, which you know anything about mental health, like therapy. That is just outrageous to hear. What does this bill have to do about stopping shootings before they happen? Not much. The mental resource officers are a step in the right direction, but once again, it is quality over quantity. The amount 15,000 new mental resource officers across the school. That is, or across the United States. That's I forgot the number per school, but it's quite a few per school, and when we could really just be focusing on getting ones that are better and more qualified. And having guards with heavily armed weapons, we have seen that the more heavily armed a guard is, the more inclined they feel to use the equipment they have been given. We have seen this already happen in our schools throughout the past multiple years, and the security guards have been disproportionately using them on Black and minority students, especially in white majority schools. We have seen Black students ripped from their students for having headphones in their ears and tased for minor violations similar to that. Once again, there's been 51 shootings in the last, out Out of the last 51 shootings, 47 of those shootings, police were inside the school within 6 minutes with a meeting time of 3 minutes. And like Uvalde, there were 376 officers in scene, but it still took them 55 minutes to neutralize the shooter after they arrived on campus. And they were trained for this. We have had shootings going on for years, and it's not like police don't see this coming. They know about shootings, they know it's a problem, and they train for it. And yet, 376 officers were unable to prevent so many innocent lives at Uvalde. When this act is focused on neutralizing shooters and ending them as quickly as possible, it should be focused on preventing them from ever happening, because they're just a terrible thing to happen. And using the safety of our children to push anti-critical race theory and pro-life on the people shows how selfish Ted Cruz is and how he cares about his personal beliefs more than the safety of the children he's pretending to care about. He is sneaking his own personal beliefs in this bill just to achieve his own personal agenda. School shootings have been going on for so long. If he really cared, he would have done something earlier, but with critical race and pro-abortion being hot topics, he is using those to gain support for this bill. And also having all these guards walking around with big semi-auto rifles, concussion grenades, and stun grenades, that is just going to be intimidating students. That is not going to help anyone. I know at my old school, I had armed guards there. They didn't have concussion grenades or ARs that they were walking around with, but I know that students didn't really like them. We had unarmed guards on our school that students were close with because they felt they weren't intimidated by them. But having police officers walk around with guns patrolling our halls, that is going to create an uncomfortable learning environment that nobody will want to be part of. Also, this is going to be turning our schools into prisons with external checkpoints where students are going to be metal detected whenever they come in. There's going to be adding new internal locks to the school, which are automatic, which normally, like most schools, they already have locks, but in this case, they're going to be automatic, and this is going to turn the schools into a big fire hazard, something that not many people have looked at.
That's your time.
All right, thank you.
Cross party.
I have a question. What component of the 5 components of critical race theory you want to teach children?
I don't know much about critical race theory, but that is not the point. He is pushing his own personal agenda and his own beliefs. Critical race theory, what it's about, should not be the important part. The important part should be the safety of our students.
Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth, because this is not a debate of whether critical race theory should be taught in school or not. It's a completely different discussion and outside the scope of this bill. This bill is to protect schools from mass shootings. The Democrats see this on an opportunity to advance their woke agenda. The fact of the matter is that critical race theory has been debunked, and whether or not it was true, it did not matter in this legislation where we talk about school safety and whatnot.
Exactly. So why did they include anti-critical race and pro-life constituents?
I would like to say that it did not matter at all, because
it takes away school funding and it takes away...
Can I continue? It did not matter at all because children in high school and elementary school were not even taught critical race theory. So this sentence that says, do not advocate for critical race theory, did not have any impact whatsoever on the actuality, because critical race theory is being taught in colleges and some law schools. It is not something for us to teach children, and it is not something to hold children hostages over to get your woke agenda to pass.
But it's also about pro-life. They're taking away billions of dollars from schools if they don't advocate for pro-life. And no matter what your stance on that is, a very hot topic.
So you agreed that
May I finish this time?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. And damn, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. But you're all good. Yeah, just adding these sneaky little remarks to take away funding into the bill is just taking away the safety of our students, because we know not all schools are gonna want to push pro-life and anti-critical race theory.
So you agree that the funding is important, but
Yes.
you refuse to let it go because of the critical race theory and the 2 sentences about abortion. Do you think that's morally
No, I
accurate
don't
to
think
do
though.
such stuff?
I do think funding to protect our parents or to protect our students are cool, is good. But I'm saying the way Ted Cruz is going about it and introducing there's just better ways to do it. We do not need to push our own personal agendas through the safety of our
But
students.
isn't pushing the critical race theory is pushing your own agenda? Because it's not a scientifically
Well, we're
renounced
not.
theory to begin with.
The Democrats did not propose this bill. Ted Cruz did, and he is the one saying that we need to not push the Democrats'
The fact
personal
that this
agenda.
legislation has not been a law is because Democrats have been blocking it with all they've got because they won't let the critical race theory thing pass. That is the only
That is
reason.
your time. All right, third speaker for the application. Unless you're taking your time. Y'all have 2 minutes, remember?
What?
The 2 minutes of prep time?
Oh, we can do that?
Is
Yeah.
it
Well,
just
yeah.
individually or just together?
And the whole team has 2.
Oh, so no, like if they take
They
it,
have
then
two,
it's
we
just
have
them. Okay, okay. Do you want to take yours as well? Or do you want to take
Let's
both
take
of
it
them?
and talk about
It's per team, so
Okay.
you all have 2 minutes.
Okay, so
Are y'all doing it?
Yes,
Yes.
please. Let's put 2 times.
okay.
Just a second. What? So I'm bringing up
You're taking it 2 minutes. They're in the 2 minutes of prep, but we are in the debate.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I used this, and this one. This one. Yeah, these are good, but none of them are very close. Then do, okay. So I'm just kind of like,
Anytime there's like just to time yourself.
I don't know. Do you want me to time it? I
Yeah,
just can't.
you know,
Like,
because time is going fast.
Yeah.
And you're not realizing this. As long as you put it in, just have the time to pay attention to it. Definitely short.
Oh, my stuff is that older too. Like looking down. I'm not looking down.
That is your time.
Do I go? Yes. Okay. My name is Priscilla Garza, and the affirmative side is true because we need the funds that have been made available due to public health emergencies to be made available for the school security measures. We are seeing more children die because of gun violence every year, and it is critical that we take action to spend the money made available towards these children. So what it is investing $15 billion in school safety personnel, doubling the number of school resource officers, as well as investing $10 billion to hire 15,000 school-based mental health professionals. We also want to increase the school security through grants and also triple FEMA's nonprofit security grant program to help secure these schools. So we kept hearing that seeing so many armed guards will damage the kids' mental health. I just want to know where the evidence for seeing an officer on campus will damage and hurt their mental health. I know that I've seen school with officers and I really could care less. I mean, that sounds kind of mad, but anyways,
seeing a police officer maybe from the moment they start school up to they graduate will become a new normal. And as sad as it sounds, sometimes that's what you need to be safe. So you kept bringing up as well that kids felt safe with officers who were not armed. For the sake of the children, there can be officers who are concealed, especially around younger children, because they're not necessarily going to be flashing around their guns how y'all keep claiming. I don't think that there's going to be a police officer with 2 AR-15s around his neck walking around campus. They're not going to be, walking down the hallways with these guns, going into these kids' classrooms. The kids are, going into their classes, sitting there for 40, 45 minutes, going to their next class. Most of the time you don't ever really see the school officer. He's just mostly going to be around when, these kids are in a big setting like lunchtime and recess. And again, too, you're not going to be seeing kids playing in the recess playground and the police officer with the gun right next to them. They should know better than that. So we want to pass this bill because we want to make the security better. This will obviously take time, but at the end, we will work on making sure that with that time, that the money invested will, increase the safety. Putting more effort and investing on this will not only end the violence in the schools completely, but it will help with decreasing and ending the life of the threat who can come in and attempt to hurt the children. As well with the CRT, it is something that is wanted to be brought into the schools better than right now. Our priority is not that. It's really ensuring the safety of these kids and keeping anyone who is a threat out of these schools. And the only reason y'all want this bill not to be passed is because of CRT, but we want to think about the kids more right now. We also believe that this evidence on its own, it is quite important because in the recent years, it has been shown that the trust in the first responders by communities and children has plummeted, and having trustworthy officers at school will help build a better bond between first responders and the community they serve. So this legislation will not only provide actual safety, but it wants to pinpoint the origin of this mass shooter madness and cure it. Not to mention the enormous amount of jobs and overall help to meet this will get. Let me see. The way my opponent slanders the name of the first responders in the name of racism is very dangerous. This case, we debate whether this law will protect the children, and the opponent agrees. But why does the Democrats love to saw out in the community? This evidence that my opponent gave was weak based on the race theory and hating on first responders who protect our community and our children is wrong, and we just want these kids to make it to their full graduation. And having this bill is just the first step into working towards safer schools. It may not be perfect, but that's why we have drafts, and we will continue to push this, and maybe one day we will get it passed so we can have safer schools.
All right. Are you taking your time?
My name is Princess, and I just want to talk about what she said. You guys claim that kids are going to be more safer if the officers are carrying around more guns to be more armed so they can scare away the shootings. But how are you going to do that? Like, how are you going to protect the kids if they're not carrying around? Like, you guys are not making any sense. And also we said, how is being more armed bad for mental health? Because it's intimidating image working around the halls with someone holding like a gun to your face. How are you gonna be comfortable like that? That's just uncomfortable, especially for little kids. We can say high schoolers are getting more used to seeing more officers, even though they're not like that armed, but for elementary kids, that doesn't seem very good. And what makes you think we're heading on the first responder? Yeah, using the safety of children as leverage to push anti-critical race theory pro-life into people shows how selfish Ted Cruz is and how he cares more about his personal beliefs than the safety of the children that he's pretending to care about. And having more armed guards won't prevent any shootings. I hope you guys know that already, but the FBI database shows that out of the 51 school shootings, 47 those times police were inside the building within 6 minutes with the median time of 3 minutes. But we have seen recent events like where the 376 officers within 3 minutes but still took 55 minutes for police to neutralize the shooter. Everything in this act is focused on ending school shootings as quickly as possible when it should be more focused on preventing them from happening. Yeah, and also putting heavily armed police in school halls is simply not the answer to stopping mass shootings. And not only because it terrorizes students. According to the 2008 Rand Corporation study evaluation, the New York Police Department's firearm training between 1998 and 2006, the average hit rate during gunfires was 18%. When facing returning fire, police officers hit target at a rate of 30%. The absurd rationale presented with the personnel of arming teachers and placing heavily armed deputies in schools is, don't worry, we'll protect your children by having shutouts in schools. That's not going to work. It's easily to pick on craven politicians such as Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who embarrassed himself throughout the night by evading questions, speaking only in platitudes, and offering no actual policy commitments. Yet our society needs to be deeply reflect on whether the answer to those mass shootings is really the further militarization of our society. Yes.
Alright, thank you. So now it's the Grand Crossfire, so it's gonna be everybody.
Can we all stand up for this, or?
Sure.
I have a question to whoever talked about how it was not okay for mental health providers to tell parents about what's going on with their children. What was the problem with that?
The problem is it's gonna stop students from trusting the resource officers, because if you're going to seek help from an adult other than your parent, it's probably because you don't want to tell your